Hi artists, it's time for our first sculpture. Today I'm going to show you how we're going to make a little plant out of air dry clay. For this project, we want you to explore a simple 3D form, like a little cactus or a little plant or some other 3D shape. First, we will come up with a design idea, then we will build our armature and our clay plant, and finally we will get to paint it. Your first job will be to explore some design ideas. We recommend that you Google things like cactus or small plant or 3D forms and pick one to do for your design. When I did this with my daughters over winter break, my older daughter wanted to do a mushroom form, so she drew a little sketch here in her sketchbook and included the pot below it and then started to color in the mushroom. Because this is a sculpture, it's important we know what it looks like on all sides. So on this planning sheet, you're going to draw your design on the front and the back and then color it in fully. Also think about a design that you could paint onto the pot below the plant. Some of you may be wondering why there's a black dot in the middle of that paper. The answer is I have no idea. It could be fun to think of your sculpture like a little creature and have a face or something on one side. Now once you have your idea, you have to make an armature. Remember, armature was a vocab word, and it's basically like the skeleton or support structure that's going to hold your sculpture up. This project is going to be a mixed media project. That means there's more than one material. We'll use air dry clay. It works the same in some ways as clay that goes in a kiln, but in other ways it's a little bit harder to attach the pieces. It dries after about a day or two, and then we'll paint it. We'll be using some wire for armature. Also, we'll stuff our pots with a little bit of newspaper and foil sometimes to create our forms. And then finally, our plants will live in this little pot here. Your first step once you get your pot is to put your name on the bottom with a permanent marker and your class period. Now it's time to make an armature. One thing I recommend is to take a quarter piece of newspaper and make a ball with it, and then grab 2 wires. Okay, so you take the ball that you just made like this, and then you make an armature with 2 wires. You tie them almost in a knot like this, and then I'm going to stick the ball in the middle of the wires, and I'm going to pull it tight like this, and then I'm going to jam it down into my pot. Now, so that this doesn't pull back out, pop over to the glue gun station. Here's the glue gun station. It's all heated up. Don't touch this part or the hot glue that comes out. And squeeze a little hot glue in the bottom. Push it back in there. Push it down. And you could even put a little bit more along the sides. And now as it dries, you'll be able to build your armature and it won't pull out of your pot. Now I can use these 2 wires and attach my plant onto these, and it'll help ground it into the bottom of my pot. So here's my quick design I made. A little 2-armed cactus with a face and a flower on its head. So now with this armature, I'm going to start to twist the wires to create these different forms. So I'm going to need kind of a part that's the 2 arms. This can be 1 arm here. And it's best if you just kind of twist it. It gets a little stronger the more you twist it. And then I'll make the other arm. And finally, I'll make the head. I'm going to kind of twist this back on itself. Now I'm going to wrap clay around this armature and make it more 3D. Okay, now my armature is ready to add some clay. We have enough clay that each student will get about 1/3 of a package of clay. Now this is air dry clay, so the more it's exposed to air, the more it dries out, and you can't use it once it gets too dry. So we're going to tuck it over and put it back in the Ziploc when we're not using it. And then this piece here, I know your first instinct may be to smash it or poke it or break it or play with it, but what we want to do is expose it to the least amount of air as possible. So the first thing I'm going to do is just take a little piece off and start to stuff the top of my pot. This will help create a little layer that'll dry nice and hard and support my plant. Okay, doesn't have to be too thick, but it should go under the plant, around all the sides, and hopefully you have enough newspaper in here that you're not going to use up too much of your clay lining your pot with some of the clay instead of your plant. The next thing we'll do is roll out some slabs and cover our armature. Now to roll out a slab, you may have a rolling pin, or you may just be able to use your hand like this and flatten it out. You could even use a marker or any other round tool like this to get it to be even and flat so that you can wrap it around the arms of your sculpture. So I'm just going to break a piece here. I'm going to put the armature in the middle, and I'm going to take this and I'm going to wrap it around, kind of like a little blanket for one arm of my cactus. Look at that. I'm going to do it now with my other one. Wrap it around. Nice thing about the slab is that it kind of gives you an even amount of clay. Not too much, not too little. And then it also creates a lot of surface area. Okay, I still have some clay left, so I'm going to do my top part of my cactus now. And then the last piece will be to smooth it out, erase the evidence of any cracks or places where the clay came together, and then we'll paint. Now for the most part, I have my armature covered, and I'm going to start taking just a little bit of water on my finger and smoothing out the places where the clay is cracking. You kind of want to pass your finger back and forth, rub on the cracks, and they'll start to disappear. I'm also going to try to blend in any areas where the two pieces of clay have come together. And right here I've got part of my wire poking out, so I'll take a little clay band-aid and put it on top and then smooth that out. Now if you want to add some little decorations like any little flowers or pokey things, my daughter made little pieces of grass, you can make those too and try to stick them on. They may or may not stick, but you can always hot glue them later if they've come off. I'm going to use a pencil here to help get into some of the narrower areas and smooth them out. And so your challenge is going to really be to build your form in one class period. If you are not done with your form in one class period, you'll have to put it in a Ziploc bag and really seal it. If you are done, you can set it just like this to dry. If you're done shaping your form and you have some leftover clay, you could use it to fill the bottom of your pot a little bit better. Or you could even make another little arm on your plant or some leaves. But remember, keep them nice and thick, not too thin, so that they aren't too fragile. Okay, so now I have a good amount of clay in the bottom there. Any clay that you're not using, put into a sealed plastic bag, and hopefully we could use it for another student. If you are going to attach something on the top of your sculpture, you could try the clay technique where you scratch to attach, and you make a little scratch mark here, and then you scratch the surface of where you're going to put it, put a little bit of water there, and then push the two together and kind of wiggle it into place and hold it there for a minute. That could help your project attach. If later it falls off, you can always glue it back there with a glue gun. By the way, mushroom kids, start with a ball of newspaper or foil, flatten out one side, make yourself a slab of clay, and then wrap the ball in the clay to cover it all up, and you can form out your mushroom head by trimming the edges of the clay and smoothing out the top part. Make a little stem for your mushroom by wrapping the clay around wire and then pushing it into your button mushroom top. Okay, to make this more interesting, she wants to add grass. So we're just kind of rolling little chunks of grass in between our fingers and then just pushing them down into the wet surface. Okay, it's time to start. Remember, you only have one class period to work with the clay.